Welcome to the Heartland Journals podcast with your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of heartlandjournal.com.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Steve Abramowitz, and this is the Heartland Journal podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and pass it around. We only grow with your help. Thanks for doing it. On the show, we're focusing on our nation today with always an interesting person making a positive change in our community, where I interview people who are making an impact and are lovers of truth. Today, we're talking with a very special guest and lifesaver, Dr. Peter McCullough. Dr. McCullough is an internist, cardiologist, epidemiologist, holding degrees from Baylor University, University of Texas Southwestern Medical School, University of Michigan, and Southwestern Methodist University. Dr. McCullough has broadly published on a range of topics in medicine with thousands of publications, 700 citations in the National Library of Medicine. Dr. McCullough is a well-known public figure in medicine. Let's get into it. Dr. McCullough, how are you today?
Thank you.
Do you remember why you wanted to be a doctor when you were younger?
I think ever since I was born, I wanted to become a doctor. I didn't focus on anything else. It was a childhood aspiration, became really an adult pursuit. And, you know, the course of my training from the time I graduated from high school, I graduated at age 17, to the time I was fully baked as a practicing doctor, that was a 17-year training course. A lot of people don't realize doctors are far and away the most educated and trained professionals. That's nearly an entire military career, and that was just completing my training.
Yeah, it's no joke. How ingrained in the medical schools was the Hippocratic Oath for young doctors starting out after World War II in the 50s and 60s like you?
It was well ingrained. The Hippocratic Oath has many elements to it. People know it best for, above all, do no harm, meaning that, you know, we do a lot of things in medicine, but, you know, we should never do something that harms patients. There's another phrase in the Hippocratic Oath that says, I will not administer a poison to my patients. So, you know, if we thought a drug was really poisonous or a vaccine was causing harm, we would never administer it to our patients. This is very important. And then finally, a lot of people don't know this. The Hippocratic Oath says that doctors will not perform abortions. They won't take a human life at any point during development. So the Hippocratic Oath is something that has been cherished. It still is adhered to and administered during the time of medical school graduation. And the pandemic has brought us back to examining doctors and nurses and others in the pandemic who actually followed the oath and who broke it.
That's exactly right. Do you think that you growing up, like you said, lifelong dream coming out of World War II era, there was some kind of connection to that, to being somebody who would want a profession of do no harm versus maybe today we're seeing people who could think less of it?
That's a good point. There's two overarching documents to examine. One is the Declaration of Helsinki, which was born post World War II, and that says that each patient should receive full, free, informed consent. That's very important. That it's consent to participate in a medical procedure, take a medication, take a vaccine. But it's only of free choice and after being fully informed. And the second one is the Nuremberg Code, which came out of the Nuremberg trials conducted in Germany. And I went to the courthouse where all that took place and visited it myself a few years ago to learn that the Nazi doctors who conducted heinous experiments on essentially captives in World War II, that those doctors were pursued for violations, fundamental violations of human rights. And one of the edicts that came out of this Nuremberg Code was that no one, under any circumstance, should receive any pressure, coercion, or threat of reprisal for participating or not participating in research, right? So no one can ever be pressured. And then the second important part of the Nuremberg Code is no research should ever be done when we believe the test article or the agent that we're studying could cause the loss of a human life. It was very important. If we ever think something could actually cause the loss of a human life, we shouldn't research it.
We also got the term banality of evil from those trials. When do you think the institution of medicine changed? And from my perspective as a healthcare consumer, did it change? Was it Reagan liability waiver for vaccines, or the rise of the insurance companies paid for by corporations at work, or HMOs like Kaiser? When did do no harm become profit motive?
Yeah, I can tell you that from a healthcare delivery perspective, the income gained by doctors, hospitals, salaries of nurses and others, that largely comes through government sources and insurances. And that took place over time, and that's been kind of a steady tonic flow. So it's not pulsed with, juiced with big profits. But the pharmaceutical industry is very different. I mean, they view it like any other industry. They have blockbuster products. They have marketing campaigns, executive bonuses, sales bonus programs. And it's always been that way, for well over 100 years. So we always have to temper the advancements in medicine. Remember, the U.S. government doesn't develop medicines, neither do medical schools. Pharmaceutical companies do that. Vaccines are largely invented by companies, not by medical schools or the government. And so, as things have moved along, we've always had this constant check on conflict of interest, check on pricing, and a lot of legislation that has to be followed by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration regarding claims. But I do think a break point, an inflection point here was the 1986 Vaccine Injury Compensation Act. All medicines, as well as actually all medical care, is subject to, liability. That, in medical practice, if I make an error, and the most common ones fall into two categories: failure to diagnose and failure to treat, I'm subject to the liability of a malpractice lawsuit. If a drug causes a harm and the pharmaceutical company has not adequately informed a individual that this could occur, and largely their tool of doing that is in what's called the important safety information in the package insert, then they can be liable for a lawsuit. But in 1986, all that changed, and it said specifically for vaccines, because vaccines have unavoidable harms, they can't be avoided. Once the vaccine is injected in the body, you can't get it back. Because they have unavoidable harms, under President Reagan, Congress and HHS wrote the Vaccine Injury Compensation Act. It basically said the vaccine manufacturers are free of liability lawsuits.
So literally, if they put hemlock into a vial and shot it into your arm, that's okay, because it's supposed to cure headaches or something of that nature.
Well, remember, there's other injectable products. So let's take, an injectable product that I can use to lower cholesterol. It's called Repatha. Once I inject it, I can't retrieve it, but, that product is subject to liability lawsuits. Turns out it's very safe and it's very effective, and it's been tried and true. But why would a vaccine get a special consideration? If a vaccine, and the trend in vaccines is to put more different vaccines into the same vial. So more and more. Now we're up to, 4 vaccines in a single vial: measles, mumps, rubella, and the chickenpox vaccine in a single vial. Now that singular product now has 4 different things that can cause side effects, and yet it's injected at one time. And all 4 products and the combination as a whole are protected against any liability lawsuits. If something arises, something happens in the child, it's just tough luck for the parents.
So three good ones and one bad one, and it means that the 100% is protected, just like peanut butter and jelly in the same jar. Did did any of those colleges you attended, Baylor, UW, Texas Southwestern, Michigan, did they give you a unique, now rare it seems, perspective where you could step out of the mainstream narrative and think different, being one of the lone voices of reason out there this decade? Because 99% of the NIH funded research grant dependent ones didn't seem to graduate critical thinkers like you.
Each person's different, and just like with every profession, there's differing levels of quality, of personal excellence, pursuit of the truth. It's very different from one to another. Just same thing in law. You can get absolute top shelf lawyers that have debated cases in the Supreme Court, and then you can have others that that chase ambulances and deal. It's just there's a tremendous variation. Well, I finished top of my class at UT Southwestern. I went to University of Washington in Seattle. At the top time, it was the top medicine residency in the United States. I had, prior to COVID, developed through my scholarship and research an entire new area of inquiry in medicine called cardiorenal medicine, the interface between heart and kidney disease. So I was on a very different trajectory than your rank and file professor of medicine at a medical school. So when the pandemic rolled in, I waited to see what type of leadership we'd see out of chiefs of medicine, chiefs of scientific disease, infectious diseases. Who was going to claim that they had figured out how to treat the illness? Who was going to seize that protocol? And was it going to be Harvard or Duke or University of Michigan? UCLA? Was it going to be, what is it going to be? The Karolinska Institute? There's great European. Who was going to claim that they had conquered the illness to help people prevent hospitalization and death? And I was stunned. In February, we heard nothing. March, April, May, June of 2020, there still was not a single individual or institution that had laid claim over the ability to conquer the illness. And I was talking to my colleagues. I said, this is stunning. This is the academic opportunity of a lifetime. And so I worked with colleagues, and like as we always do in medicine, colleagues at Emory, UCLA, Yale, Henry Ford Hospital in Detroit, Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas, and we published the very first protocol on how to treat COVID. And it became copyrighted in my name. It's called the McCullough Protocol. So I seized that academic opportunity. And, I thought for sure, being out in front first, and I published it in a very high level journal, the American Journal of Medicine, and it was the #1 read paper in that journal for years. I thought for sure I'd bring on competition. I thought for sure Harvard would come in and say, you know what, we can do better than Dr. McCullough and his team, or that Mayo Clinic would step up. I thought for sure that would happen. But as time wore on, no one else actually claimed they could do it. Not a single, major academic name as an individual or institution laid claim that they could help people through the illness, prevent hospitalization and death. So in many ways, the pandemic has been the capstone of my academic career.
It really is shocking that of all of those institutions, I don't know how many, 5,000, 4,000, nobody, you and Dr. Zelenko were the only ones I heard saying other than just line up and get this shot. Go down to the Seattle Seahawks stadium and get ready for a cot because it's coming.
Well, to give credit due, Dr. Zelenko did get out a white paper early on, never published a protocol or an organized approach. The Frontline Critical Care Consortium, they had produced kind of a list of things to do, but again, not a protocol, saying step 1, what do you do? Who's at risk? How do you organize patients, and how things are applied? And to this day, my protocol stands as the only one. This is astonishing. Even the National Institutes of Health has not published a protocol of what you should do step 1, 2, and 3. They haven't published a correct conceptualization of the illness. None of these groups have.
You're the man. No, you are the man.
Yeah,
So, so
the illness has a viral phase, and then an inflammatory phase, and then a thrombotic or blood clotting phase. And to this day, you can't find any document outside of the McCullough protocol that puts that into graphical context and how to apply treatments.
I mean, the conspiracy theorist in me would have to say, they buried these Kennedy papers for 50 something years. This is like that. So as we approach the 5-year anniversary of COVID lockdowns, it's a good time to take the measure of our, various responses to the pandemic, which you just described. Yours is probably the only real response that should have been taken, but there was others. My general sense of things is that we overreacted, but you're the guest. What is your assessment?
97% of us contracted COVID-19. So think about that. Everything that was designed to prevent the population from getting the illness failed. If we all got it, then that means lockdowns failed, social distancing, hand sanitizers, masks, contact tracing. Remember all that?
Oh, yeah.
It was all a waste of time. So if we would have had the foresight and come out and say, listen, we're all going to get it. We might as well brace ourselves for it, have early treatment for high-risk patients. This thing would have been over with in 2 years.
Yeah, we basically tried to repeal the law of herd immunity and said everybody needed to just wait for this vaccine. And when it could have been hydration, vitamin D, vitamin C, quercetin, and zinc, like a flu, which now in hindsight, we see the numbers of flu disappeared during those years. And now it's back. Apparently this year is a bad one. So lockdowns were a terrible idea. And the vaccines made no difference to the course of the epidemic. And there I was in Seattle, Washington, and had just turned 50 and was about to go get my first man appointment where they check you out from a different angle, let's say. But it was ground zero where COVID was breaking out near your alma mater, UW, and Kirkland, Washington.
Mm-hmm.
That was about 20 minutes from my office in Bellevue. So I was listening to you instead of Dr. CNN or Dr. TV. It was an easy choice. You were the most published cardiologist in the world, and Sanjay Gupta and Dr. Oz are actors, let's just call, or news actors. Tell us what alerted you first, and most important, what gave you the confidence to step out of line from the $1 trillion marketing campaign to force vaccination on us? Many were terrified into silence, but not you. How come?
Yeah, well, first off, I'm writing a Substack right now about medical correspondence. But since so many medical problems broadly embrace this issue of, medicines or vaccines, surgeons are terrible, selective. It's terrible to select a surgeon to be a medical correspondent. Sanjay Gupta is a neurosurgeon. He's never taken care of a sick patient in his life, his entire career. So it wouldn't be a good thing to have a neurosurgeon advising America. Dr. Oz is a cardiac surgeon, same thing. Dr. Marty Makary has recently been nominated for head of the FDA. Same thing. Surgeons are good at operating. That's it. So in medicine, we have a lot of jokes about surgeons. Like you wouldn't go to a surgeon for medical advice, let alone have them be on TV. So a lot of people just fail to understand that. That many times, another one is Atul Gawande. He was at USAID. He's probably lost his job right now. Most surgeons who are not doing operations and doing surgery, maybe they're not too good at surgery.
Yeah,
then they start doing other things. That's my immediate suspicion. You do your surgery residencies are a long period of time. They're 5 years plus to be a neurosurgeon. It's 2 more years. You invest all that time and you're not doing surgery.
Yeah,
maybe you didn't make the cut. That would be the very first thing I'd think about. Very first thing.
I mean, a touch in a bubble, not relatable.
Yeah, if I had a patient with COVID-19 or measles or some other illness, I wouldn't go to a surgeon to ask him, what do you think's going on? I'd never consider it. And I certainly wouldn't consult a surgeon regarding safety in a vaccine. So I've kind of beat up on surgeons a little bit, but the public doesn't know this.
Well, CNN did, because that's probably why they invited them and not you, because they didn't want the answers that you were going to give, which I was lucky enough to be able to discover thanks to the usefulness of the internet at the same time as COVID. And I remember like it was yesterday, I went to the Seattle doctor And he tried to shame me, can you believe it, into getting the vax. He said, so with millions of doses given, you think you're the one that will get adverse side effects? So I just said, I want to wait and see how people do it. Like you said, I want to sit back and wait and see how it goes. And it didn't end well for most of those people, you know. And so I also asked him, would he sign off on it if something happened to me and my life insurance policy? And then he wasn't. So I honestly thought I was going to have to break out of the office like a prisoner to get out of it.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, this was February of the thing. So anyway, I went with Cologuard through the mail because I didn't trust that doctors anymore. Do you find the world has lost faith in doctors like the boy who cried wolf?
Yeah, well, I'm the only public figure in the world. In August of 2020, before the vaccines came out, I published an op-ed in The Hill, widely read journal, still on their website today. And the title of the op-ed was The Great Gamble of the COVID-19 Vaccine Development Program. Think about that. There's not another public figure in the world who questioned these vaccines. There were no doctors who questioned the vaccines, not a single one. Now we're 5 years into the campaign. As you point out, it's been a disaster. Not a single chief of medicine has come out and said, these didn't work out very well. Now they're not out on TV saying we should continue vaccination. They're shamefully quiet. But the reason why I express my concern is the vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, and Janssen and AstraZeneca, they were the genetic code for the spike protein. The spike protein is the spine on the surface of the virus. We knew by August of 2020 the spike protein was the lethal part of the virus. Lethal. It was found in the brain, the heart, found to cause blood clots in the lungs, in autopsies of people who had COVID in 2020. So it was the most disastrous idea in the world to give synthetic genetic code for the spike protein and have that be produced for an uncontrolled duration and an uncontrolled quantity in the human body. It was the biggest biological gamble ever. I mean, if you want to make a vaccine out of the benign part of the virus, the ball, the nucleocapsid, that would have been one thing. But not to superload the body with the lethal spike protein that was engineered in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. I mean, everybody who's taken Pfizer, Moderna, Janssen, or AstraZeneca, they've got a little piece of Wuhan, China in them. It turns out the messenger RNA is not easily broken down in the human body. We don't even know if it is eliminated from the body. The spike protein has been found circulating in blood for over 6 months in people who have taken the vaccine. A lethal protein is in the body's circulation for months after these shots. Think about these revelations now. So when I give big public programs, and we're talking thousands of people in the audience, we're 5 years into the pandemic, 4 years into the disastrous vaccine campaign, I ask for a show of hands. I ask how many people know someone who's been injured, disabled, or died after the vaccine. 85% of people raise their hands. 85% of people.
Isn't that approximately the amount of people who took the booster? 85?
Yeah, 85% of people know somebody. They know somebody, whether it's themselves, family members, friends, or others, who has been injured, disabled, or dead from COVID-19 vaccination. 85%. So the point is, and I've done this countless times, the point is the public knows. The public knows the vaccines are not safe. Okay, that's the tension here. So the public is not taking any more boosters. They know it's not safe. President Trump has banned COVID-19 vaccine mandates because they're not safe. States had previously banned it. We had about a year ban in Texas. Governor Abbott in Texas banned COVID vaccine mandates because no one can be mandated to take a vaccine, which could take their life. That was the whole principle here. So if the entire public knows it's not safe, why hasn't a single, chief of medicine or chief of infectious disease come out and said, listen, we were wrong. The vaccines turned out not to be safe. Where is the honesty in medicine? And I think because doctors will not come out and just say simply, we didn't know, it turned out to be a bad idea. Since they won't come clean on this, the public is dropping trust in medical care like a rock.
Makes sense. I mean, it's going to take new management, like the new president of University of Wisconsin or UNC, where they did gain a function, is going to have to say, "Oh, look what that person did," because they're liable, I guess, and they're still there. Is my guess. I don't know. It's unbelievable, and it would be such a devastating liability. It would put everyone out of business. I think it was Alex Berenson that said 600,000 deaths has never looked more like zero, meaning COVID deaths weren't death from COVID, maybe death with COVID. How did you know it wasn't from COVID so quickly?
Well, it's just the way the CDC counts infectious disease deaths. So, for influenza, as an example, if we look at, quote, flu deaths, that could be anybody tests positive for flu really at any time during the season, and then they die. So it's a very loose definition. So if somebody tests positive for influenza in December and they die of a hip fracture in March, it's considered a flu death. So when influenza deaths are adjudicated of did they die of influenza pneumonia or viral sepsis, the answer is about 15% legitimately died of flu. So whenever you hear about flu deaths, you've got to kind of say, okay, it's 15% of that's the real number. With COVID-19, there was multiple studies saying the same thing. Remember, it was test positive at any time and then death. That with COVID, in the United States, our CDC data suggests it's about 10% of the number really died of COVID. The Italians have done this, and they say it's really only 3% of the number really died of COVID. So in the United States, if we're at 1.2 million COVID deaths, that means it was really only 120,000 people who truly died directly due to COVID. The others had significant other medical problems or were at the end of life. What Berenson is coming up with, that 600,000 number, that's different. That's actually the estimated deaths due to vaccination. And where that comes from is our CDC has logged about 19,400 Americans who've died of the COVID vaccine. And the deaths come in reported by doctors like me. I've already made the determination the vaccine is a cause of death. If the vaccine is not the cause of death, I'm not going to report it to the system. So the 19,400, that's a solid number. That's a shocking number, by the way. We've never had a drug or a vaccine ever be allowed to be on the market and rack up that big of a number. But it's grossly underreported because unless I have the vaccine card and the lot numbers and everything else, I can't report the death. So the estimate is in FDA testimony that 19,400 is underreported by a factor of 30. So if you do 30 times 19,400, now we're at about 560,000 Americans have died of COVID-19 vaccination. That's the reason why everybody knows of somebody else. It's too big of a number. It's approaching Civil War casualties. Civil War casualties about 620,000. Everybody after the Civil War knew somebody who was impacted by the Civil War, whether they were a civilian or a soldier.
And that's why this big lie can't be sustainable. It's going to be uncovered because everyone knows the truth, like you said, except for those in power who are trying to keep it hidden. You talked about surgeons making virus decisions being out of their lane. In September 2021, think back to then, a man with COVID, his wife sued an intensive care unit at Westchester Hospital to force them to give ivermectin. One judge in Butler ordered them to, and another judge, Michael Oster, said no, and it was stopped. Jeffrey Smith died. Judge Oster said he based his ruling on the lack of evidence showing ivermectin is likely to succeed in treating COVID-19. Remember, this is September 2021. Did Judge Oster not know about your work? Did he not know about Dr. Zelenko? I mean, do you remember this? It was pretty awful because it basically gave the hospitals the ability to deny treatment.
Well, there's process and then there's substantive issues here. So the process is we should never have a judge decide medical care. That should never happen. That's not, that would be like me as a medical doctor rendering a legal decision. I can't do that. A judge cannot render a medical decision. Remember, medicine is both an art and a science. So only a doctor can do this. We should never have cases like this come up, to a court. So that's the process issue. The substantive issue is that at that time, we had already had the ICON trial, which was a prospective comparative trial, 2 groups, published in the best journal, Chest, and the first author is Rochter. And it demonstrated that ivermectin, given at the time in the emergency room and through the hospital stay, reduced mortality by 50%. And at that time, there wasn't time for large prospective, double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trials. We needed, good comparative studies, good clinical judgment, and if doctors were finding it to work and be successful, patients had the right to get ivermectin. Every patient, in my view, should have gotten ivermectin through the course of the hospital stay. It's safer than Tylenol. Why wouldn't we do this? Why wouldn't we give patients a shot at survival of COVID-19?
And didn't the same year or the year before COVID, didn't they pass that right to try?
Senator Ron Johnson was the sponsor of the right to try trials, largely, for cancer, but said that, listen, everybody should have a right to try. And we had principles in medicine published in our medical literature and medical ethics called shared decision-making. Shared decision-making meant when you're in the hospital, you share in the decision of what type of treatment you get. And your family, if you can't speak for yourself, shares in that decision. All hospital care is a negotiation. Being a doctor who's been at the bedside my entire career, believe me, I have patients in the hospital and the family says, listen, I think they need something to calm them down like Valium. And, we negotiate everything in the hospital. Everything's negotiable. Another principle is medication reconciliation, meaning any drug that someone's taking at home, they have the right to bring that in the hospital and take it in the hospital. So any patient on the McCullough protocol, which was the most widely used protocol to treat acute COVID-19 in the world, that was credited in saving tens of millions of lives and sparing hundreds of millions of hospitalizations, any person on McCullough protocol had the right to continue all the drugs. Remember, McCullough protocol by December of 2020 had ivermectin in the protocol. And it was a protocol, so it offered many choices, but they had the full right to take everything in the protocol, from nasal sprays and gargles to aspirin to vitamin D, vitamin C, quercetin, famotidine, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, Paxlovid, molnupiravir, corticosteroids, colchicine, anticoagulants. Patients as an outpatient under my care and doctors like me, they got more comprehensive, more intensive, and more effective care as an outpatient at home than patients in the hospital who were stripped of their rights and they were minimally treated.
Oh, the hospitals. I wish I had time to go into that too. But in 2001, a book came out called Prescription Games about the industry of prescriptions. In it, a man named Barry Sherman said, the branded drug companies hate us. They have hired private investigators on us all the time. He and Bunny Sherman, there's a $35 million reward to find who killed them. They were among Canada's most generous philanthropists and founders of Apotex, Apotex, that made cardiovascular drugs, respiratory drugs, budesonide, out of Toronto, Canada. Do you know these people? Do you know this story? And budesonide, I think, is one of your drugs. Could they have tried to get rid of them because they were the maker of something that was a cure?
I know the story. I can't possibly know, but you're bringing up a good point. The drugs we used in McCullough protocol, outside of Paxlovid and molnupiravir, which were added later, they were all generic drugs. They're all very affordable, widely available. Many things were over the counter.
Vitamin C?
Over the counter. I mean, to me, the most impressively were the nasal sprays and gargles. So, for instance, xylitol based nasal spray in a clinical trial by Baumforth. This is a large, prospective, double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial. It reduced the risk of COVID by over 70%. It was better than a vaccine. I mean, we should have had everybody using nasal sprays and gargles twice a day, especially our high-risk patients, to prevent developing COVID-19. There was an active treatment trial by Chowdhury, again, large, prospective, double-blind, randomized controlled trial, showing iodine-based nasal sprays and gargles reduced the severity of COVID-19, turned the PCR negative quickly, reduced the spread of the illness by that mechanism, and resulted in fewer cases of hospitalization and death. There were even trials of nasal sprays and gargles in the hospital that improved hospital outcomes. Yet there was no mention of this by any of our government agencies. To this day, our government agencies don't suggest something simple like a saline nasal spray or xylitol-based, iodine-based, polymer-based. There's been a large prospective randomized trial published in Lancet Respiratory Diseases, generally for nasal sprays in the early prevention of upper respiratory tract infections, and that was a positive trial. Let's go over 15,000 subjects.
Even Dr.
So we have
Fauci was coining the phrase of nasal pharynx, how it settles in the nose. That's how you get it. So why wouldn't you flush it? Yeah, that's what I did. You do it? And I never got COVID because I literally listened to you and used a Flonase, I think it's called, over the counter.
I was late in really adopting this personally, and I regret getting COVID to begin with. What we've learned is the virus is up in the nose, and that's COVID, flu, common colds, is up in the nose for about 5 days before the lymphatics drain back to the throat before you get a sore throat. So as soon as you get a sore throat, the virus has already been in your nose for 5 days. So if you use a spray twice a day, spray it up, sniff it back, spit it out, and then you gargle, the virus never really gets to set up shop, and you don't kill every viral particle, but you knock it down enough where your own mucosal immune system takes care of it, and you don't clinically get the illness. This is very important, and chances are you don't spread the illness if you're using a nasal spray and gargle. And it just broke my heart that this was the thing to do. This was far more effective than wearing masks and social distancing and lockdowns. Could have been done by everybody.
And a heck of a lot better than 70 shots to a baby before they're age 5 with aluminum and mercury in it, right? I mean, this is the cure for the common cold we're talking about, which that is verboten somehow in the medical world.
Well, Steve, I've interviewed some people for my show now. I've been really interested in this because such a common practical intervention. And they've gone 10 to 20 years with no colds. That means no flu, no COVID, nothing. And the only way you can go 10 to 20 years with no colds is do a nasal spray and gargle twice a day. And people say, well, what spray? I said, it doesn't even matter. It's saline, just salt water. And there's data you can put a little bit more salt in it, make your hypertonic saline, that there's supportive data there. I personally use Clear products, which are xylitol-based products, XLEAR, and then the companion gargle is Spry. I think the data are very good there.
That's healthier than fluoride in the toothpaste.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking
twice a day.
Yeah, I mean, we are strongly recommending this for our farm workers to help prevent bird flu, and if you get it, to reduce the severity of it. We strongly recommend it now across our seniors. I saw my mom in a senior home recently. I said, Mom, are you doing your nasal spray twice a day? And had to get it out and show her again how to use it. People need to get up to speed with practical prevention measures. If they get anything out of this interview, Steve, everybody should be doing a nasal spray and gargle twice a day, just like they brush their teeth, and just watch what happens with respect to health. I'm finally on the program after many years, and I tell you, traditionally, I get 4 to 8 colds a year. During COVID, I was sick almost every month. People saw me on Fox News and primetime TV. I was sick almost every month. I'm now, on my 8th month of no illness. And if I go 12 months, my wife and I are doing this together, it'll be the first year of my adult life without getting a viral cold or upper respiratory illness.
So simple, so simple. Okay, so Recently, another court case, a 49-year-old Black African male presented with chest pain and breathlessness after a COVID-19 vaccine. He died in hospice, 49 years old in hospice. Last week, President Trump's U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins granted conditional approval to start injecting chickens with an untested experimental mRNA vaccine for bird flu. Ms. Rollins apparently slept through the past 4 years and missed the fact that she only has her current job because of the Maha moms and voted for President Trump so that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. could be America's HHS secretary. It now appears that someone gave Secretary Rollins a talking to, and the mRNA poison in the food supply is off the table for now. Biden and Fauci would have went along with it. All systems would assume that. Trump and RFK seem not to be doing that. Do you think the future of mRNA is a complete ban from the earth or in the food supply?
Well, first off, let me just correct that. In 2021, the U.S. FDA approved the CSL Seqirus vaccine, which is an antigen-based vaccine. It's a bird flu vaccine for humans, but it hasn't been rolled out. And the USDA is nearing approval of an antigen-based vaccine for poultry, but hasn't done it yet. There are messenger RNA vaccines in development by Moderna for human bird flu, and then self-replicating vaccines by the Gates Foundation and CEPI, again for humans with bird flu. But in a paper by Lee and colleagues that analyzed this, the Chinese have been using antigen-based vaccines to try to vaccinate poultry, and it's failed miserably. It actually makes bird flu worse. So we know that vaccinating birds will not be a wise idea. Brooke Rollins did come out and ultimately say that they're going to pause on this. But human bird flu vaccination looks frankly dangerous. The CSL Seqirus vaccine, that's an antigen-based vaccine, typically the safest of all the vaccines. Normal human volunteers died with that vaccine. And I can tell you, bird flu is preventable with nasal sprays and gargles, easily treated with oral oseltamivir. I just can't ever imagine that anyone would take a bird flu vaccine. At the Wellness Company, we feel so strongly about this. We've rolled out the Prevent and Protect program. We're offering farmers free kits with nasal sprays, throat sprays, and the drugs they need to treat this if they got it anyway. Free. People just sign up. So go to Wellness Company, twc.health.com. This is a Heartland podcast. There'll be a lot of farmers in the heartland of America who just want to have some kits on hand in case something does happen. So
isn't it the same thing though? It's repeating the same mistake by killing the chickens instead of letting herd immunity take hold. And it's not known to jump to humans unless you mess with it, like you said on TV that they're dealing with it in Atlanta.
Yeah, well, you're right. So the bird flu pandemic is just like COVID has gone on far too long. It's been extended because of this process of mass destruction of healthy chickens, and then closing down facilities, sterilizing them, repopulating them, and then they get bird flu again because the migratory waterfowl keep reinfecting the farms. I have to be honest with you, Steve. I think we need somebody at the level of an MD or a veterinary doctor in these cabinet positions. Honestly, we really do. It's just lawyers are not going to do it. RFK doesn't have enough education to do it. Neither does Brooke Rollins. We need to step up here. These are big medical issues. They're big population ecology issues. We can't have people who are outside of their lane trying to interpret all this.
Well, it's like I told my kids when they were not allowed to go back to school. I said, as soon as you start making politics out of science, you're making a big mistake, because now the Democrats own one side of it, the Republicans own the other, and you can't go back by saying, okay, I'm going to appoint a neutral Dr. Atlas type without somebody coming out for them, or you, and getting doxxed and sued.
I know, but if I was in RFK's position or Brooke Rollins' position, I'd say, listen, I'm the highest ranked person here. I'm a doctor. I'm making this call, period.
That would be
great. And it's just, that's what it is. You just make the call. But they
used to be the Surgeon General, right? That was the Surgeon General's job, but somehow he got neutered when Fauci took over.
Well, you're right. The Surgeon General's position is to be America's doctor. And we haven't seen a strong Surgeon General since C. Everett Koop. The Surgeon General, that's purely up to that person. They are an independent physician. Luther Terry was a very influential physician. In 1964, he called a big meeting to Washington and presented the Surgeon General report on smoking. You should have seen the chiefs of medicine at that meeting. It's on stage. You can watch the video. These people look green and sweaty. They are so nauseated to hear that smoking, which doctors did for decades and they promoted smoking, actually was causing great harm. And that type of meeting will happen at some point in time with the COVID vaccines and the messenger RNA platform. And you're going to see a lot of doctors look very sick because these doctors took these shots. They had their families take their shots. They encouraged their patients to take the shots, and they've caused grave harm. This deep psychological dilemma that doctors and nurses are in right now, that's actually a big part of the problem.
It's going to be a great
right now,
revelation.
I think the only doctors who can think clearly are those doctors who are unvaccinated and the very rare doctor who took a vaccine and realized they made a mistake. But, patients are seeking unvaccinated doctors like you cannot imagine right now, because it's only the unvaccinated that seem to have clarity.
Well, that's a good point, because I'm concerned about the blood supply for emergencies. Like most people, I remember in the 70s, you didn't want AIDS tainted blood or HIV tainted blood. Now we have COVID tainted blood. Can anyone who got the shots, maybe the first and not the 9th booster, is there a detox protocol, or will they be making spike protein for the rest of their lives and their children's lives if it passes through the semen?
Well, here again is where I filled a gap. So we saw patients suffering with vaccine injury syndromes, no Harvard protocol, no Mayo protocol. The Biden administration spent $1 billion on this problem with research. No answers, none. The Biden administration, in not a single project, studied the spike protein. Not a single project. The spike protein is the cause of vaccine problems.
Is it because it causes inflammation because it's a spike running through your veins?
Yeah, it causes inflammation. It causes autoimmunity. It promotes blood clots. It's not supposed to be there. Can you imagine $1 billion and they never measured the problem? The spike protein. So I filled this gap. McCullough protocol, base spike protein detoxification, the only peer-reviewed published protocol on how to handle this, period. No one else has even come up with a protocol. The World Council for Health came up with a list of over 24 things to try. So did the Frontline Critical Care Consortium. Lists are not adequate when people are suffering. And so McCullough protocol based spike protein detoxification is the combined use of nattokinase, bromelain, and curcumin in high doses, in medicinal doses now, to help the body clear the spike protein. The leading product is the Ultimate Spike Detox from the Wellness Company, 2 capsules twice a day on an empty stomach. That's on the label. I commonly go to 4 capsules twice a day. And now we start to see some big time improvement. People start to clear.
Does it decline the rate of spike production, or does it wipe it out?
Well, it wipes out what's there. And the hope is the body can ultimately catch up with the messenger RNA and maybe shut it down. We don't know yet, but we watch antibodies to the spike protein decline. Companies are racing to try to measure spike protein so we can measure the mass of it. But we can't have spike protein circulating in our bloodstream. It's going to cause heart attacks, heart damage, stroke, blood clots, for sure. It cannot be good.
It's like too much heroin or too much cocaine. I mean, you can't take enough. Okay, I'm going to run out of time with you, unfortunately, because I think I could do 4 hours like a Joe Rogan show. But how could we have gotten to a point where the checks and balances, FDA, CDC, NIH, and even the childhood immunization schedule to go to school would mandate we use these now proven unsafe and ineffective vaccines? I think it's 70 shots before we're 5 now. How could we be here in 2025?
It's gone on through history. There's a 300-year history of a love affair with vaccines. Out of all the things in medicine, drugs, surgeries, interventions, there's nothing like vaccines. Vaccines are like a religion, and they're presented to us as articles of faith, and they're taken based on faith. You'll hear people in medicine say, do you believe in vaccines? We don't say that, we don't say, do you believe in amoxicillin or do you believe in, Prozac?
Right.
We present vaccines as articles of faith that we should believe in. And that if we're hesitant to take vaccines, that's a bad thing. So, there's these scores, vaccine hesitancy scores. Oxford has one. That's a bad thing. Recently, the new director of the NIH, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who's expected to be confirmed, signaled, in fact, the NIH has signaled they've dropped dozens of vaccine hesitancy research programs. Vaccine hesitancy is probably a good thing, not a bad thing, and that we should all question risks and benefits. But vaccines are like a religion. It's vaccine ideology. That's the reason being. They're not judged based on scientific evidence. They're all introduced as being safe and effective. All their side effects are swept under the rug because it's a religion. People want to believe this. They don't want to know the truth. They don't want to know the truth. And there's a 300-year history of this. This is not new. In fact, it was way worse during the smallpox vaccine. People were put in jail for not taking the smallpox vaccine. But people have been harmed by vaccines for hundreds of years. Now, as the vaccines stay out long enough, they become refined, and I think they do become safer. And I do believe some have played a role in having diseases become less common. But sanitation, better nutrition, better quality of life, that's responsible for most infectious diseases becoming less frequent and less deadly, including ones without vaccines like scarlet fever and others. No vaccine for that.
Yeah. Even polio, the Holy Grail, has never really been tested against a placebo. As far as I know, I read Turtles All the Way Down. Right. You and Ryan Cole and Dr. Tenpenny, who has been on here about a year ago, y'all got vilified and canceled and slandered, and Dr. Atlas got shunned from the White House task force. Like a great book, by the way, he wrote about the backroom stuff going on with Dr. Birx, who ran the states, and Redfield, and the whole thing. Besides what we saw in the news, did they come hard for you and try to cancel you?
Yeah, there was certainly attempts to cancel me, but I think I've just been too big and strong, as you probably can see. But we're going to have to leave it here. In fact, I have a patient right now, so I have to get rolling. But thank you so much for having me on the Heartland Journal podcast, Steve. Great program. Make sure you follow me on social media. Go to my Substack, Focal Points, and sign up. Get a free email every day. Get all the graphical abstracts, all the citations, everything that's there. It's all the science that you need to navigate there. Make sure you check out my show, America Out Loud Talk Radio, McCullough Report, and Pulse. And importantly, go to McCullough Foundation, McCulloughFND.org. That provides the financial basis to make all this happen. Steve, thank you so much for having me on the program.
Thank you, Doctor. It's been an honor. Good. God bless.
Sing a song about the heartland, the only place I feel at home. Sing about the way a good man works until the day.
Thanks for coming back. It's that time to remind everyone to please subscribe to heartlandjournal.com. That's how to keep this growing. And the only way I can get amazing guests like that to come on is because you watch and forward this around and tell everybody how it's going. Now, the Heartland Journal news. Fish and cattle being looked at, and I gotta say, with Robert McCullough saying bird flu may have come out from Atlanta, a lab. I don't like pharma injecting stuff in the food supply. Last year, Tennessee made it illegal to put in lettuce unless regulated like a medicine. But of course, most ag is imported from other states and overseas. Amazon just got busted for labeling organic veggies from China, right, at Whole Foods. So we just need to ban this stuff from the earth. The ag department gave $600,000 to study menstrual cycles in trans men. You heard that right, trans men periods, okay? So they don't deserve to experiment in food or, like we talked about, refrigerators for the poor with Stacey Abrams, who has no background in NGOs, charity, or business except grifting. Same ag department that thinks it's okay to inject cows in lettuce, God help us, also in the news. Secretary of State Marco Rubio took over as acting USAID director last month after Doge Musk's whiz kids found the organization spending on woke and left-leaning social activism. He ended 83% of the programs. After a 6-week review, the 5,200 contracts that are now canceled spent tens of billions of dollars in ways that did not serve, and in some cases even harmed, the core national interests of the United States, he said. He further confirmed that the remaining 1,000 programs would be administered directly by the State Department. Closure of the USAID headquarters in D.C., which the Border Patrol then acquired. That's Tom Homan. I'm actually writing an article about this right now. $375 billion EPA slush fund gave billions to charities founded only months earlier. The Biden administration funneled at least $20 billion into environmental groups, most of which had only recently been founded. Vice President Kamala Harris handed over a check for nearly $7 billion to Bethesda, Maryland-based group Climate United Fund, which does not appear in the IRS's charity database and has no federal filings. Incorporated in Delaware on November 30th, 2023, according to public records, 5 months before Harris handed over the cash in April 2024. $10.8 million pre-development loan solar project on tribal lands in eastern Oregon and Idaho, and a $32 million solar energy project at the University of Arkansas, but they represent only a drop in the bucket of the grant's amount. What was the purpose of creating middlemen entities when there are so many established groups in the climate space with good track records? What was the value added in by doing it this way, especially with such large sums of taxpayer funds? Last year, EPA advisor Brent Efron was caught on video describing how the agency hastily parceled out a related $20 billion climate fund that was held by Citibank before the end of the Biden administration. Just shovel that money out the door before we're gone. Get the money out as fast as possible before Trump administration come in. It's like we're on the Titanic and we're throwing gold bars off the edge, he said in video posted online by activist group Project Veritas. Now, Lee Zeldin, the new EPA chief, said he wants to claw back the cash doled out by the Climate Fund, 8 pass-through entities. On Monday, he called on the agency's inspector general to investigate $7 billion into a ghost fund called the United Climate Fund. This was all part of a $20 billion jackpot from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund that was tacked in and tucked in so you could really find it in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, and had nothing to do with reducing inflation. Nothing. It was a scam. Stacey Abrams, failed attempted governor of Georgia, $2 billion of that was, we know of, likely more, said for refrigerators for poor people, or was it appliances for votes, or did she just fill her fridge with ice cream like Nancy Pelosi because nobody knows where the money went? I haven't seen the Lowe's or Home Depot or Joe's Appliances store receipts yet. I'd like to. A black hole of legal fees, vague solar promises, and political insiders. A lot who just got their security clearances yanked, like the 51 spies who lied, and law firm Perkins Coie behind all of it. Before receiving a $2 billion grant, she had only raised $100. Teapot Dome scandal in 1920 is still taught in schools today. That debacle cost the U.S. in today's adjusted dollars $400 million. $2 billion is more than $400 million for you liberals listening. This is a big scandal. That is it for this episode. Thank you, Dr. Peter McCullough, for being the only doctor that seems to have taken to heart the Hippocratic Oath to do no harm and at great cost saves lives, and not to be just concerned about making money or going on TV to lie. This is goodbye for now. I am your host, Steve Abramowitz, editor-in-chief of HeartlandJournal.com. See you all next time. Peace in our time, and definitely glory to God.
Yeah, I've been dreaming of the wild, wild plains, walking where the pine trees dance.
Heartland Journal Podcast is the media property of HeartlandJournal.com, where you can find news stories, commentary, and content serving the heartland of America. Any views or opinions represented on the podcast are personal and belong solely to the creator and do not represent those of the people, institutions, or organizations that the creator may or may not be associated with in professional or personal capacity unless explicitly stated.